Mornings with Matt. Yeah. The Deering Acting Studio Podcast, where we discuss the connection between life and acting.
Alrighty, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Mornings with Matt on the Deering Acting Studio Podcast. Today is Thursday, and we are jumping into acting. We're going to be doing an acting exercise today called Actor's Nightmare.
Yeah.
Ooh, scary.
Ooh. Believe it or not, it's every actor's nightmare.
And I cannot wait to dive into this exercise. Before we do, we'll hit up our daily devotional. Brian Sweeney, you're up.
Brian
Yes,
Sweeney.
sir. Can you hit that backup record real quick?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Well, all right. Daily devotional, Luke 12:24 through 26. Consider the crows. They don't plant or harvest. They don't even have a storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. How much more valuable are you than the birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest?
So talking about worry, talking about fear, talking about the uselessness of it.
Yeah.
And the fact that if you trust and if you have, but here's the thing, it's yes, that's true, but at the same time, you do have responsibilities. You do have stuff, like you do have a calling. So it's like, I think what it ends up being is when you're one with God, when you're in your right state, the fear goes away.
Yeah.
And then just to remember, whenever we're in these like fearful states or worrisome states, that at the end of the day, we know like life does work itself out.
Yeah. Totally.
It tends to work itself out, or else you're gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And either way, if you're a believer, like you're good.
You're good. You die, you live. Either way, you win.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I really like about this the idea of providing. That again in fearlessness we can understand that we are provided for. And again, there's work that we have to put in to make that happen. But at the end of the day, like, what do we need to live? We just need to eat a certain amount, drink of water, and that's it. Like for survival.
Right.
And I think sometimes we get really into all the things we want and have in a like culture like we have, instead of realizing that at the end of the day, we will be provided for to the extent it's needed.
Yeah, and I would say too, the amount of time and energy wasted on worrying.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm one of the people who understand that, so that it's a blessing and a curse, because when I know I'm doing it, it then causes more worry because I'm worried about the worrying, or whatever. Or I can at least look back and go, wow, you've been wasting all this time on worrying when you could have been going next level. What are you doing?
Yeah,
what are you doing? Cut it out. And so when you're not wasting that time and energy on worrying, then what do? Then you get closer to truth. You get closer to what is right. Get closer to doing something that's going to be more beneficial, because worrying is just going to drive you backwards.
Totally.
So the idea here is there's no point. Now, having said that, today's show is all about an exercise that does tend to cause worry, and that's why we picked it. We're going to be diving into the acting improv exercise called the Actor's Nightmare. We're going to break it down for you. So first of all, we're going to define the game and explain exactly what it is, how it works. Then we're going to play the game. And we'll do some start-stop critique, or, just sort of like analyze it as we go. And then afterward, we're going to talk about the professional acting implications as well as the life applications. If you were able to take this exercise and do it or something similar to it on a regular basis, the positive outcome that would have for you. All right, so to define the game, we're going to start there. Defining the actor's nightmare. In a nutshell, here's what it is. Any improv scene usually begins with some sort of a what we call a get, or some sort of a suggestion from the audience. You don't know. That's the improv part. I don't know what's going to come at me, so I get a suggestion. So you get a suggestion, which would then inspire a scene. From there, one of the actors in the scene has regular dialogue Anything they want to say, they can say. The other actor in the scene can only read from a book. Now, generally speaking, we would have, say, 4 or 5 books available, and the audience would choose the book. So I always think when it comes to improvisation, the more power you can give to the audience, the better, because it essentially helps them to see clearly that this is improvised. Clearly, like, there's no way you could have like pre-planned this. So that's sort of the idea behind getting those suggestions. There's, of course, actors like TJ and Dave or whatever, they come out and say, you have to trust me, this is all made up. That's how they start their shows. And their shows are fantastic, unbelievable shows. And they do build that audience trust. So very cool. So that's the basics of the game. The basics of the game is one actor has regular dialogue. The other actor would read from a book. Today, in particular, we're going to be reading from Acting is My Day Job, 7 Strategies to Market and Make Money as an Actor.
Woo!
It's a good book, but it's also, it might be very funny for this game.
Yeah, don't undersell it. It's a great book. It's a great book.
Thank you, Brian. That's a nice shameless plug there.
I can't help it.
So what we're going to do then, okay, is one person will read from that book, and the other person, I guess in this case, would be Joey. Joey, you'll have regular dialogue when we get to that part. All right. So what is the essence of the game? We're gonna start here because I always like to break down the game first before we dive into it. So that's I just defined what to do, but I didn't define why. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand why you're doing a thing, you might do it. You might stumble across funny accidentally, but you didn't really get to the core of it. So you're not going to actually take the acting lesson and abstract that out of it. So here's our why. Because what's the nightmare part of this? All right.
The nightmare is the justification.
Right. I mean, the nightmare is the person not reading the book.
Yeah.
Number one. Because they have to deal with all these curveballs that are being thrown at them constantly. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Gotcha. So I'm the one dealing with the nightmares?
Yes.
Okay.
However, the person reading the book, it's sort of a nightmare for them too.
Yeah.
Because you're handcuffed. So in essence, if you're completely selfish, you could be the person reading the book and could say, well, it's not my fault if the scene's not good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And therefore, it doesn't feel like it's a nightmare on you. It feels like it's the other person's fault. However, it's sort of a nightmare for the person holding the book if you take full accountability for the scene. Mm-hmm. Because then you have less power to impact the scene to help the other person than if you had regular dialogue. But there are many opportunities, which is what we're going to talk about today, is like how you can, as the reader, set up your scene partner and therefore take full accountability for the scene being good. It's not one person's job. This is a 2-person scene. So that's the nightmare part of this, okay? Now, we call it actor's nightmare because then the audience is like, ooh, that's so hard. And it is hard. Mm-hmm. But then when you go next step, okay, and you're like, okay, so what are we really doing here? What did we essentially create? And here's what we created. We created an ongoing surprise, an ongoing unknown, and that is game. In improvisation, that is game. That is weird. It's going to be probably weird. Sometimes it'll fit, and then it's funny because you don't expect it to fit. And then other times it's like, oh, like that's off. So as long as you know that that's what's coming, what's supposed to be coming, and how to deal with that thing, then it becomes a gift. Then it becomes something it's like, oh, wow, it's so easy to create comedy within this structure. Mm-hmm. So what do you do when you're the justifier? We'll start there. When you're the justifier, you have to establish the scene. You have to establish the relationship. Mostly establish almost everything. Your who, your what, your where. Because you cannot rely on the other person because they're stuck to the book, right? So that's sort of like going to be on you. Then when you get a piece of information, usually in class we'll say, we'll say that you have to do make one of these two moves, yes and or yes because, moving a scene like forward or moving a scene, sort of tangentially to the side. And so the person who's justifying is going to need to say yes because, and then add an extra because or and to the scene. You have to move the scene forward. So if you say something to the other person and then they respond, you're going to have to justify what they said, but your instinct is going to be to stop talking. Because that's what we would do a lot of times in scenes is what, like, you'll hit me and then I will justify something assuming it's your turn to talk. But no, in this case, I have to justify it. Then I have to transition and then I have to set up the next game. So this is a really, really, really good exercise for becoming unselfish, for becoming one of those actors who knows how to set up their scene partner. Because it's all about slow play. You don't get to be the one making the jokes. You've got to be focused and you have to find a way to move yourself into, like, either further into the game that you're in or always adding something else new that we think is probably going to set up a funny that's going to come from this unknown book. Because it's going to be like I'm reading a random passage from something that doesn't necessarily fit into this scene.
Yeah. It also will help a ton in two places. One, when you're working and you're literally receiving nothing, right? So if you're on stage with somebody and they're new, or like you could then perform in a kids program and they'd like throw just one little sentence at you. And then the other thing I think it helps a lot with, and I'm sure you'll get to this when we get to this side more, is the emotional listening.
Yes.
Too. Like, so because you've got to really make it's kind of like even a Meisner E in a sense, like beyond the words into deep emotion of the characters.
You're 100% right. So you hit on a bunch of things there. First of all, yes, emotionally reacting, being fully connected with your scene partner when you're the reader, adding space work. You can add in some of the where. What do you not say, or how do you not say it? What type of pauses do you take in between the passage that you're reading? All of these things impact how the other person is going to be inspired by you. The other thing is, and you mentioned this briefly, is character. If you're in it and you've been named something, you can embody that character and really, become that person. So in this exercise, it's all about learning to be patient, learning to not rush, learning to say, what can I do with silence? How much can I offer? How much can I add to the scene with silence? And that's what's going to be going on with the other person. So this is essentially, now this is the framework we have in front of us for Actor's Nightmare. Okay, so what we need is some form of a suggestion. Do either of you guys have your phone with you?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, so I want to make sure that we know for sure that this is going to be improvisation. Okay.
Sure.
So why don't we go to something, Brian, where you can easily get information. So either like a news source or Instagram or something where like there's just random stuff.
Okay, Instagram.
Instagram. Okay, cool. So in a second, what we're going to do is we're going to get I'm going to ask you for a suggestion. So you just kind of scroll up and then you find something that interests you, something that's like, oh, that popped off the page. That'll be your guys' inspiration. Okay? Then we're going to begin. Joey, is there any way that we could do a split screen with the two of you?
No. I mean, if we take away the green screen.
I just go sit next to him too. I mean, whatever.
I think it'd be, technically you go back and forth, or what you could do too is bring me the iPad and I can go back and forth. But,
Oh, yeah.
But a split screen would be nice.
Sure.
Okay, so so I'll do the editing here for a second. Bear with me.
Cool.
And so the two of you are going to be in a scene, okay? And we're going to get a suggestion from our friends on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And then from there, Brian, you're going to be the person with the book.
Yep.
We've got the book chosen. I'm going to give you a random page from which you're going to start from, okay? That means that you'll begin from that page, and then you can kind of like shift forward like randomly
Okay. Cool.
Whenever you want, and then you just sort of find something in the book and then you go. But you got to be very careful not to have long pauses.
Got it.
So you kind of look, you grab a sentence that is a sentence, and then you just sort of go with it. Okay, and you can read longer, shorter, or whatever.
Avoid 24 through 41 because those are some great pages that are exercises.
I got you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
For the viewer and the buyer.
All right, so here we go. Let me see here. Drum roll, baby. We're going to play some Actor's Nightmare.
Hey!
All right, so Brian, let's get our suggestion for the two of you.
Suggestion is, I am coming for everything they said I couldn't have.
I am coming for everything they said I couldn't have. Okay, that is a phrase that is going to inspire the scene. I am coming for everything they said I couldn't have. It's just an inspiration. We are going to begin now our game, Actor's Nightmare.
Morning, Chet. Didn't think you'd be in here this early.
As a beginner on the scene, if you are not informed, you will tend to fall into the trap.
That's right. Yeah, my dad always told me that when I was growing up. Said that's how you become a failure, son.
Define the trap.
The trap is deep. It's a deep, dark hole. You can't pull yourself out of it.
Where's the trap?
It's everywhere. No matter where you go, you gotta just stay away from it.
Good. Now you have to transition and you have to add more.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, since you're here early, do you want to help me feed the customers?
I did tell you to show up, didn't I?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a joke yesterday, but now I see that it was more literal. So, yeah. All right, so we got about 40 guests in the lobby, so we can just start cooking up, getting their entrees ready.
There are a few things you should do to make the most out of these situations.
Oh, really? Yeah, I thought, my supervisor told me about this when I was coming up in the business. He said exactly that. There's a few things you should know when you're coming up. And he said 1 is customer service. 2 is treating people how you want to be treated, the golden rule. And
Set him up.
And I'm forgetting number 3. Do you remember what it was?
Once you establish relationships with the people who can hire you in town, you'll have all the information needed to capitalize on those events.
That's right, Chet. That's it. I don't know how I forgot that one. That's almost the most important.
All right, scene. Good job, you guys. That's it. Yeah, boom.
Hey!
All right, cool. So, let me ask you. I'll start with you, Brian. How was that for you?
It's good. It's challenging. Yeah. Just quickly jumping in that and trying to make it emotional to tie it in.
Yeah.
But I felt the strain on his end.
Right.
And you just want to find ways to help, to throw things that way. you
Right.
know. And then when he did the setups, it was so much easier. So on that last one even, it just fit,
Right.
And technically it didn't, but it did
Right.
because it was him asking me something and it sounded like mine was an answer to his deal.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Joey, how was that for you?
Yeah, it was fun. It's hard. I haven't done this game in 5 years. So it was kind of a refresher. But like Brian said, at the end it started to click because you had me set him up, and then I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense.
So one of the things when we're doing the justification is we want to find a way to take what was said and we want to really expound upon it. We want to take what was said and we want to define it into our terms, into our world that didn't exist yet. So that's why when I said define the trap, we sort of had characters. I think you were chopping, but be careful whenever on video you have to do stuff up because we couldn't tell.
Yeah, I
but
was chopping.
Okay, it looked like that motion from down here, but it was just you kind of vibrating.
Yeah, he was playing the drums at first.
Okay, so we didn't know. So, but having said that, so he says, the trap. Okay, the first thing that came to my mind when I heard trap was a bear trap. I don't know why. That's just like the first thing is word association.
Yeah.
So then you're like, yeah, that's right, the trap. And I was talking about the bear trap, and then you go down deep into this detail of like what that means to you and why. So when you hear something, you want to define it. You want to get deep into the definition of it, and then kind of move forward into like what's the next thing we're gonna do. Sometimes questions work in this game, but they got to be very, very good leading questions.
Yeah.
So you did ask a question and it did work, but you just have to be very careful of that thing. Mm-hmm. And then you could see, Joey, I could see on your face, that's why I would pipe in every now and then, where I could see where you're like about to stop talking and you have to realize, oh, wait, no, I got to stay in the scene here.
Yeah.
I got to stay completely connected. It's my responsibility now to move this thing into the next move. And ideally we do so seamlessly. Right? Then there was the final move, which was the most successful, right? And you were about to say number 3. There's number 1, there's number 2, there's number 3. You were about to say
yeah.
And ideally, there's an ideal move here. First of all, this comes back to the best improviser does not take the joke, but gives the joke. The best improviser sets up the other person for the laugh. And if you finished watching the scene, the novice is going to say, oh, Brian, you were so funny in that scene. The expert improviser is going to go, oh, dang, Joey, you set up Brian like crazy in that scene. Right? And so you really have to be completely unselfish because the audience, for the most part, won't see the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of magical. Okay? So having said that, then the next ideal, so you're setting him up for the joke, and you always want to be doing that. So you're always looking for, how could I set him up? How could I set him up? How could I, almost anything. You could almost say anything here and it'd be great, right?
Yeah.
So then the next thing is to say, okay, how can you do it in such a way that doesn't get caught or is not so quite so obvious? So I didn't say forget it. I just said set him up, right?
Yeah.
So a way to do that would be something like, my mentor said, he always told me 3 things. He's number 1, blah, blah, blah. Number 2, blah, blah, blah. And number 3, I bet you never guess what number 3 is. There's no way you get it. And then whatever he says is right or wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever he says something and it's super profound and you're like, no, that's really dumb.
Yeah.
He actually said this, right? So that's a way where you can basically you're kind of framing and here's what's fun for the audience is in that particular circumstance, if you drag it out, that means you understand the game.
Yeah.
And you're helping the audience understand the game. They're watching what you're doing and they cannot wait to hear whatever the heck's going to come out of his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay?
I totally get that.
Cool.
Dang.
So this is super fun, and we can see, of course, it is a struggle. Yet, and you have to not worry. Going back to our Bible verse, you have to put yourself in this frame of mind of relaxation. But then you also need to know the technical aspects of what comes next, as sort of like a surgeon or an engineer saying, I'm going to engineer this game. I'm going to be putting one move to the next move to the next move. And both players here have vital roles in figuring out how to make this game sort of click. But when you're on it, when you figure it out, you're with 2 scene partners that understand the game, it then becomes pretty easy if you can fall into the formula and you establish the relationship, you establish everything else. So then all of a sudden we have something that matters to us.
We should do this in March.
What do you mean?
Improv.
You mean perform it?
No. Teach it to the class.
Yeah, this will be a good exercise.
Yeah.
I think
because I noticed it's like what you said. Because again, I've technically done it, but it's been so long I didn't remember the formula or anything. So I was able to relax into it, but I didn't get it.
And I'll tell you, Joey, truthfully, you may have never been taught the formula. It's possible.
Probably.
Because truthfully, we don't always have time to stop and slow down every game to this degree. You know, because there's so many games and we want to put them out there, and so sometimes it's like it's sort of like any theater show, right? At some point in time, you have opening night, and you just got to go up with where you are.
Yeah.
You know, so it's possible that you were in the classes and this exact understanding of what was behind it was never clear. So you did it and you didn't know why 3 out of 10 times it was awesome. So you wanted to do it, but you're playing Russian roulette.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's more bullets in the gun than not in the gun. When you don't understand the game, that's the way improv feels.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I want to do it. It's like, you know, it's like a bad golfer, you know, goes out and hits one drive right down the middle, you know, like 400 yards. And you're like, I can golf, baby.
Yeah.
And then like every other shot's like, and it's like, no, you can't, because you don't really understand how you did it and what you did. Not really.
Yeah.
You think you do, but you don't.
Yeah, Brian knows all about that.
All right. I had a rough golf day. That's all.
I gotta say, we played some billiards last night, and Brian was on his A game.
He
Feeling
was
it,
on
man.
his A game.
Feeling it.
But didn't I win both games?
Okay, it doesn't really matter. All right, let's move on.
You did. All right, so let's finish up here. We're gonna wrap the show right now. We're gonna wrap this segment. This is you know, I think we're gonna start this, by the way. So this is a little side tangent, but
like this.
But Thursday's gonna be acting day. We're gonna jump into acting, just dive into acting. We will relate it back to life as we do just about everything. But yeah, Thursday's gonna be acting. So if this is the type of stuff you love, tune in on Thursdays. We will be doing this thing. All right, so let's analyze the game. Okay, what do we get to extract from this in life, gentlemen? You were in it.
Yeah. Well, heightened listening,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. I mean, the idea that, especially on Joey, he's got to hear every little detail and then build upon it and hear, like you said way in the beginning, the things that you don't hear.
Yeah.
About how they're responding. And so then on my end, it's my responsibility to deep listen to not just his words, but what he says, and emotionally create responses that send back to him.
And that, I love what you're saying here, and I will tie this back to the worry idea. Okay, so what happens a lot of times is the person holding the book is worried.
Yeah.
You're worried for themselves. Most of the time, they're selfish.
Sure.
So what are they doing? They're looking at their line, trying to make sure when it's my turn to say my line out of the book, that I don't screw it up.
Yeah.
It's all about me. It's all about me. I'm being selfish. All about me. Really, you have to have full faith, complete trust that the game works. You open to a page, you look down, you put your thumb on it, and you connect with your scene partner
Yeah.
until you have to not connect anymore.
Yep.
Then it's clear it's your turn to talk, and you look down and you deliver whatever the line is.
Yeah.
However you're going to deliver it, you deliver it. And if you stutter, that's now part of the game.
Totally.
Right?
I say straight up, I did not do that.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's a lesson for you as far as like you realizing, okay, I was a little bit worried about self.
I was, yeah. And I think we've talked about this with cold reads too. You know, somebody picks up a cold read, and myself, and I would like, or any play, right? And Joey's going for his line, and then I'm looking down at my next line.
Yeah.
Before, instead of just staying fully connected.
This is
100%.
great. So this is a life lesson here,
Yeah.
right? This is a life lesson of staying connected in life, right?
Yeah.
Now, we'll get to you in a second, Joey. But in those moments when I saw Joey thinking, and I told him he had to think harder, you know, he didn't have a lifeline maybe sometimes because your head was in the book.
Yeah, totally.
So if he would have looked to you for help and he's like, there's nothing there, now he's got to continue to manufacture some of that information, okay?
Totally.
All right, so that's Brian, what he can learn, Joey. Let's set that aside. And now let's talk about where you were at and personally what you were struggling with, what you think you can take from this.
Yeah, okay, so goodness. For me, I was just tense by the end. Because I was like, oh man, I need to say another thing. But then I also like my logic brain was kicking in and telling me like, you can't say too much because then there's too much information to deal with. And so I was trying to slow down, and and you were right. I looked over a couple of times and I was like, All right, I guess I'm coming up with the trap that is everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So some of the stuff I was coming up with wasn't like logical move, and that's what my player's job is supposed to be. So I have to be able to relax. It's okay if it's slow, but don't present a move that makes no sense because his moves aren't going to make any sense.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so you fell into a couple traps here, and we'll talk about it. So first off, you got tens. Mm-hmm. And this is something that you can work on. You know, so like all of us can learn from these lessons. That's the point. So when you get tense, what happens? We don't perform as well. That's just the way it is. So focusing on, I can repeat this exercise over and over and over again until I feel relaxed doing it. Okay, number one. Number two, if you looked over and any kind of judgment came to you, not good. Instead, if you look over and there's nothing there, what is the nothing and how is that inspirational to you? Because no matter what, whatever they're giving you, even if it's nothing, is something. And that's what you use.
Yeah.
So therefore, judgment came in of both yourself and him in general. And then let me see. Was there anything else there that you were learning?
That what I have to say makes sense. I have to make logical moves because he can't.
Got it. So I think you were putting too much of an emphasis on this is the way it has to be. I have to be this kind of person. This is the one I'm supposed to be. Instead of understanding those are the pillars.
Yeah.
But then your job is honestly have fun. So if you don't find a way to have fun, you don't get into the scene, you're not playing. It's hard for us to say, oh, like we're in game right now because it's not fun. It's not fun for you. It's not going to be fun for him. Then it's not going to be fun for the audience. Like, he'll feel your stress.
Yeah.
And then that won't be good, right?
Totally.
The other thing I'll say too, Joey, and this is another just final life lesson for everybody from this game. And if you practice this game over and over again, what you get from it is that idea of I don't get to stop until I have something really awesome to say.
Yeah.
Whereas, I could see it in you. It's like, I want to pass the buck. I want it to be like, I did my job. It's your turn now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a thing we do in life. So to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to just like give it to you. I'm going to give it to you and I'm going to set you up. I'm going to deliver to you on a silver platter, let you be the hero. And then in life, how can I set you up and let you be the hero? How can I set you up and let you be the hero? And then just trust that everyone's going to be like, yeah, that guy, man, he made me a hero. And that's where your fame will come from. It's from all your giving, from all your loving. Instead of just going like, oh, here you go, deal with it. Here you go, deal with it. You have to stay in it. And then when the juiciest part comes, the part that's like, this is going to be great, you have to hand it off to someone else and let them be the king. Let them be the hero. That's tough. That's tough to do. It's a great life lesson. But if you can pull that off, man, life's going to be good. Your acting's going to be great. This is going to apply to every improv scene you ever do. So highly recommend you practice The Actor's Nightmare. It's a great game for life and for your improvisational acting skills. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. This has been the Mornings with Matt show on the Deering Acting Studio podcast. God bless.
Thanks for listening to Mornings with Matt. Please like, subscribe, and follow us at Deering Acting Studio to keep up with the latest content. For more information on classes, private lessons, or professional development coaching, visit www.deeringstudio.com. Have a Deering day, everyone.
Have a chippy day, everyone. Rough.